Behind the Shadows. My name is Susan Finelli, and I am your host and author of Behind the Shadows, a program where we go behind the shadows of what meets the art. This evening, we will be going behind the shadows of rock and roll, and we have a very special guest with us tonight. Our guest is Bruce Morrow, affectionately known to one and all as Cousin Brucie. Cousin Brucie has worked in the radio industry since 1959. He is a legend in broadcast history. He is the only on-air personality who has his own New York City street dedicated to him, Cousin Brucie Way, which the honor was bestowed on him by Mayor Giuliani, I believe, in 1994. The sign is located, for you cousins out there, on the corner of 52nd Street and 6th Avenue. Cousin Brucie, welcome to Behind the Shadows.
My cousin Susan Finelli. Thank you very much. I love that name. It's like, it rings a bell. It's like a piece of music. Finelli.
Finelli. What a pleasure it is to have you on my show and for you to invite us into your home.
Well, I was going to welcome you to our home, and we live down here in the village, and it's great. It's a great place to live.
It is, and especially for you, it's a great place to be. You know, before we get started, to get ready for this show, I went out and ran and bought you two books, Rock and Roll and Doo-Wop. And I wonder, would you be kind enough to sign them for me?
Well, I got to tell you something. I was surprised. You look on the opening pages, while you guys were getting ready to do the videotaping, I knew you were coming, so I baked a cake. I signed them for you.
Signed, sealed, and delivered. Enjoy our Doo-Wop journey. Love Cousin Brucie.
Yeah, these are two fun books. Each book took a year of our lives, and the first one is Doo-Wop. And Doo-Wop is really about the development of rock and roll. It goes into the 50s and ends around 62. The other book, Rock and Roll, The Beat Goes On, continues the rock and roll journey. That's about growing up in the 60s and the early 70s. Now, the book is not just about music. It's no research. It's not a research book. It's not one of these books that you use for scholarly research. It's fun. You can take this book up and take it to the John, and put it down and read it any place you want. And when the deal I made with the publisher was Imagine Publishing. I said, look, every page has to be a party. I want people to feel they're having a good time. So you can notice there's a lot of color, and it's designed very beautifully. In the book, music, the movies we went to, the TV shows we saw, clothes we wore, the things we ate, and important things to use. Because when we think about the doo-wop days and the early rock and roll days, we think about mall shops and skating and having a good time. It wasn't like that. There's good times and bad times. There's a song I think John Denver sang, some days are diamonds, some days it's gold, some days the hard times won't leave me alone. So this book has all, it reflects the whole thing. And thank you so much for getting it.
Oh, my pleasure. And you baby boomers out there, you must get these books. I went through these books, and not only did I enjoy it, but it brought back so many memories.
Well, that's the idea.
It brought so many memories.
It's a slice, it's a breadbasket of memories.
It is. It's a breadbasket of memories. So I have to ask you, because I'm sure all the cousins out there are interested, how did you get the name Cousin Brucie?
I'm glad you asked that. I've told this story. I love to, what's funny, certain things you never get tired of telling. I was working at WINS in those days as Bruce Morrow. I just came in. I was there for about 2 years. I had my first job was in Bermuda, by the way, Paradise for Two, and I had a wonderful time in Bermuda. That's where I really perfected my skills. I went to New York University, right across the street here, matter of fact. That's where I founded their radio stations, and I really got into it there. And in high school in Brooklyn, James Madison. I'm a real product for the area. I was up in the studio one day, and a security guard came up and said, there's a lady who would like to see you. And come here, bring her in. Now, in those days, we weren't afraid, and people take commentary the radio and television station, And so he brought this little blue-haired old lady in, and I looked at her and saying, oh, wait a minute, this is not one of my listeners. Something's going on here. I'm a Brooklyn kid, so I knew darn well that she was going to need for some money. She wanted dinero. She wanted some shekels, something, And I said, man, sit down. And in those days, we were playing records. I don't know, you're probably too young. You don't know what a record is.
Of course.
A little black shellac, because I go to schools. I go to schools and I say, and a record, and one kid will always say, invariably, oh, my daddy and mommy has that. It's no more. So I was queuing up my record. We used to go back and forth to get it started at the beginning. And I said, let me cue my record, and she sat down, and this lady, I remember, had sparkling eyes. Now, when somebody like your eyes, you're looking right at me and they're sparkling, you cannot resist somebody. You've learned that doing interviews all these years. When somebody looks you in the eyes, you cannot resist them. You can do anything you want, ask anything you want. And I said, yes, ma'am. The record was gone. And she said, do you believe we're all related? And this is exactly what she said. And I said, yes, ma'am. And I knew I was going to get it. She said, well, cousin. I said, lend me 50 cents. I'm broke. I can't get home. She came up to the station. Well, I thought that was so cute. I gave her the 50 cents. She said, thank you, cousin. She left. She wasn't interested in Brucie or what I was playing. And she took the money and said, thank you, cousin. And she left. That day, in the middle of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, which there's a flower, a rose still growing from the wall where it happened, a light went on. And I said, cousin, Brucie, cousin. That's it. That's it. Cousin. So, you know, this business, Susan, we all look for a shtick, a handle, we call it, right? And I became Cousin Brucie that day, and it hasn't stopped since.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that people used to knock on the studio door, because I was one of those people. When I was in high school, I went to John Adams High School in Queens.
I went to Madison.
And I majored in journalism, and I wanted an interview with you. And I called the station, and of course, no. So a friend of mine and I, we just boldly went where no one had gone before. We knocked on the studio door, and you were gracious enough, and you gave me an interview, and it wound up on the front page of the high school newspaper. And here's life in a circle, because here I am again interviewing.
Well, it's nice you said gracious. I was very smart, because I knew that someday we'd meet again. And you'd have a television show. I know what I was doing.
You know what you do. Life is a definite circle for sure. But I know in your books you say music defined a generation. Talk to us a little bit about that.
You know, music, whether it be the 40s, the 30s, the 50s, the 60s, God help us what's happening now in music. You know, to me, music stopped at about 1978. They stopped making music. Music is a definition. The poets write about things happening on the streets of society. In other words, music doesn't define what happens. Music doesn't make history. History makes the music. So a poet sees something, an event happening in the street, it might be just somebody kissing or two silhouettes behind the shade, and that's what he writes about. So he's witnessing life. That's what music is. That's what I mean by music defines a generation or generations.
Right. Well, I know the song "Good Night, Sweetheart."
Well, it's time to go.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, how he wrote that song, I think I must have watched it on one of the stations with you and T.J. Lubinsky.
Those are fun shows.
Those are fun shows.
The 13 shows.
And he was saying that he was with his girlfriend. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and her mother said, "Enough already. Get home."
Get home.
And he
what
said,
are you doing down there at 3 o'clock?
Exactly. And on the way home, he wrote the song "Good Night, Sweetheart. It's time to go." So you know, it's interesting. But I know that you also say that rock and roll stoked the fires of the black experience. Let's talk a little bit about that. And I personally, I still love to listen to the Mills Brothers. I have their music and I listen to.
Well, you know, let's talk about the Mills Brothers first of all.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about pre-doo-wop. We're talking about vocal harmony.
Right.
Now, God, the most beautiful instrument that God gave us is not an instrument we pluck or blow through or play. It's the human voice. The Mills Brothers, if you listen to their records, you know, in those days, black artists did not have the production money to produce a record with a whole band or an orchestra, right? So they couldn't afford a horn section and a string section, percussions or anything. So they used to use the human voice. So if you listen to the Mills Brothers to this day, you will listen, they emulate instruments. Bum, 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 bum. That's where that all started. And they then, in turn, Ink Spots, Mills Brothers, people like that, passed it over to the early doo-wop groups, like the Crows, the Clovers, and people like that. And today, a lot of the groups are still using vocal harmony, right? Because I mean, you go through the 50s, the Everly Brothers, beautiful doo-wop groups like the Drifters, right? I said the Clovers, and people like this, the Four Seasons, gorgeous vocal harmony. They use the human voice.
Johnny Maestro, I mean, his nickname was the Voice.
What a sad thing. I was with him about, I say, a month and a half. He was on the air with me before he passed away. And I got the telephone call from Mr. Cucci, his manager, and I heard that, and I knew he was not feeling well. Well, we lose people, but one thing nice about our business is that we have a a way of archiving, whether I do it on radio and Sirius XM or I do it on television with PBS. We have a method of archiving all this great music. That's why, we fight so hard, TJ and Cousin Brucie, to keep archiving this music because, let's face it, they're not going to be here forever.
No,
and they go. But yet, one thing, they always will remain young in our hearts and spirits because we have recordings.
We have recordings. They used to have the oldie shows at Radio City. We used to go to all of them. There hasn't been one in many, many years at Radio City. But the last time I saw one, Johnny Maestro happened to be there, and he was commenting on the aging audience because, we're all baby boomers.
You should have looked in the mirror, too.
Well, he spoke about that, and he said, in the old days when we all got together for a show, we would talk about what kind of music are you writing, and, he says, now backstage, he says, what do you think we're talking about? Colonoscopies. He said,
Oh, it hurts where I get off the other.
And that was the last time I saw him.
He did so well. He did well right straight till almost the end of his life. And I feel very bad. And I hope that eventually the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will recognize his talents. Really.
Yeah, he was with the Crests, and then he went out.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Brooklyn Bridge.
I play this music all the time on my shows.
Yes.
I love it. I love Johnny always well.
99% of music I listen to is doo-wop music. It's amazing. That's all I listen to. But I know in your book you say in 1955 the equation of vocal music changed. Previous generation of pop audience listens to lyrics and a melody. The next generation wanted to feel a beat.
Right. Yeah. But then what else on their sound? Technically recordings about 1963 and thereabouts started changing. Pre-1963, the recording technology was, was okay. It was decent. So we used to really listen to the featured performers out there singing lyrics, albeit the lyrics were not that great. It was kind of simplistic, shine on harvest moon, and things like that. And then we got into doo-wop, and then we got into rock and roll. By about 63, we started garnering some really fine poets, people who wrote some really good music, and we started delving into the human experience. Fortunately, at the same time, technology was keeping pace with the aesthetic part of it. And technology changed the whole thing. The recording industry, we were getting into stereo, the quality of the recordings were absolutely fabulous, and the most important thing was distribution. Now, what do I mean by that?
Yeah, let's talk about
Pre-63, records in the 40s and 50s weren't distributed at great. They had some distribution. A lot of times you had to go into a record store to hear it for the first time, or hear somebody play the piano and sing the record. But now we were getting into radio. Radio was getting into top 40. More young people were using sets in use. Radio became really the medium of young people by the 60s. The 45 RPM was invented, which gave young people portability, and then something called the transistor radio, which I have a batch of.
I listened to you my whole growing up.
Under the pillow. I knew it. See, I knew you were one of them.
And at the beach, under the pillow.
Under the pillow, I used to call it the Pillow Talk Club because I knew there were thousands of young people because they were supposed to go to sleep.
Exactly.
It's all right, Mom, I'm gonna be asleep. I put the thing on the little green transistor on the radio, and I talked to the Pillow Talkers. In fact, I started issuing fan club cards because when parents found you listening, you get something, you get docked or something. So on the back of the Pillow Talk fan club card, it said, "Please give Susan a free pass. It's my fault, and please excuse it. It'll never happen again." You give it to your mother. It works sometimes.
Well, talking about Pillow Talk, my mother told me she still listens to the radio under her pillow. She's going to be 90 in January.
Wow.
God love her. But she told me that the other night she heard you on WOR. Were you on WOR the other night?
Yeah, well, I do shows. I do shows, WR interviews.
Yes.
I guest at a lot of shows.
Right.
I guest all over the country.
Yeah.
My show, we're on Wednesdays and Saturdays and Sundays in Sirius, and all my shows are on Sirius XM 6. Now, on that show, I don't play only sing. I play 50s, 60s, and 70s. I play those. To me, are the three greatest decades in music. The music developed from the 50s, it developed into the 60s, and then developed into the 70s, and it really reflected our experience of our lives. And it was great. It reflected. Look, you watch television today, go to the movies today. What are you hearing? The music of the 50s and 60s. Because the music was just so easy to listen to, simple to listen to, and when you hear a song for the first or second time, and you can whistle whistling, humming, or singing, you know you got yourself a hit.
Well, you know, I may not know the shoes I'm wearing today, but tell me a doo-wop song. I can tell
You got it right.
I can sing
That's
every
it.
word.
Well, music, yeah. All right, let me see how good you are.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to take you back to John. Where'd you go to school, John?
John Adams.
Adams, okay, John Adams High School. If music be the food of love, play on. Music be the food of love, play on. Give me excessive.
I don't remember.
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
My cousin Billy Shakespeare.
Ah.
Right from 12th Night. He said that music be the food of love, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah, you just said it.
Yeah, exactly what it is. Well, I know in the early 60s, music wasn't part of a craze, it was part of a culture. And it kind of helped mold us, move on from like the black experience, and the music became a culture. So you say doo-wop, it didn't end, it was absorbed. What do you mean by that?
Well, what happened is, every generation uses their music, their thing, and passes it on, passes the baton onto the next generation.
Right.
The next generation, like the Mills Brothers, perfect example, Ink Spots. And we gave it to the Clovers, the Crows, right? And the Penguins, all the bird groups, right?
Yeah.
And they take their talents, their style of music, and give it to the next generation. That goes from the 40s to the 50s, the 50s to the 60s. So everybody learns from the preceding generation. Is there anything new? Yes. You enhance on it. But you always use things that are already in the garage. And this is the way it's always been. Music really is the experience of life.
Right.
And of course, it's part of our culture.
Yep.
Culture happens, music happens. Music reports on the culture. Music is the reflector of culture.
Well, I know you say that if we listen carefully today, we can hear echoes of doo-wop in today's music.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the groups today, a lot of the groups today, you watch some of these things if you can handle watching, right? And,
I can't listen.
Well, you should, because you are an educator, you are a media person,
right.
And you really have to, you owe it to your audience and to yourself
right.
to listen, and even if you have to hold on and say, but you have to listen, because this is what's happening in the world today. These kids, these guys with the doo-wop and the hip-hop and things like that, as irritable as it makes us, right, it still is reflecting what they're thinking about and their world. Now, I'll take you back a little bit. When you started listening to Cousin Brucie when you were a kid, your parents loved it, didn't they? They probably said, turn that crazy thing off. It's going to kill you. It's going to grow hair in your head. It's devil. So think about that. Every generation likes to hold on to the baton. So when they know that youth is going to take the power from them, they're going to fight like crazy. This happens you can look this up at the beginning of recorded time. Every time there's a generation, the next generation, youth takes it over, there's a war. There's anger.
Right. Well, I know you say that rock and roll is the soundtrack of our lives.
It is. Exactly right.
That's what it is.
And I always tell you that someday in the year 25, if man is still alive, there'll be a time capsule. And there'll be a Cousin Brucie show, there'll be a Susan Finelli show. And they'll say, that's what they did, right? That's what it was. So it is. It really is a history book. It is a soundtrack, a visual track of our lives.
It is. And talk about today's music, how and when I listen to it is when I'm at the gym. And when I'm at the gym, I can...
Well, may I say, first of all, folks, she's in great shape.
Thank you. and if I'm spinning what I'm doing, but when I get home and I want to listen to music, I must have 20 CDs of doo-wop, or I listen to it on the internet or your show. That's the music I grab, and I listen to the Ink Spots and the Mills Brothers.
Well, that's good. You have a good variety. You are a Renaissance lady, obviously. See, I believe in all my shows, when you listen to them. You'll hear not only 50s, you'll hear 60s, 70s, and then you'll hear not only the top 20 over and over and over again. Sometimes, I'll play, if you like to swing a star, carry the beans, old Little John. All right, who sang the original one? Bing Crosby. Right? So we're going to go back to the 40s. So I'll play Bobby Sox and the Blue Jeans, right? What would you rather be? A mule, right? And then I'll say, all right, now folks, that's what we hear today. I want you to hear what they played in 1942. And I'll play Bing Crosby. I'll play 30 seconds of that. I want people to understand how music progresses, that it's always a soundtrack.
Frank Sinatra sang that song also.
Sure. Well, that song was recorded.
Many times. I know that you say that putting one human being in touch with another, that's what rock and roll is all about. And that rock and roll is not just revolutionary, it's evolutionary.
Well, you really read this book.
Yes, I read them both.
I'm listening to you talk about it. I'm saying to myself, maybe I better reread this book.
I really read the book. I was telling you before we went to air, my husband's been trying to read the books, and I won't lie. I need these books for research. When I'm done, you can take them and read them. Yeah. And that goes to what you've been talking about, how it evolves, from what it was to what it is today. Let's talk a little bit about Elvis Presley.
The king.
The king. Talk a little bit about him and what he...
Well, I was very fortunate that I had the opportunity to meet him a couple times. I really believe that if it wasn't for Elvis Presley, who really was a rockabilly, what they call him, the hillbilly cat years ago, they used to call him, believe it or not, which is not a very nice story.
That's not so nice.
He was so revolutionary in his day. That if it wasn't for Elvis Presley, the recording industry would not be where it is today. We'd be back maybe 15 years. Because of Elvis Presley, everything started changing. He was revolutionary. And he appealed to so many, tens and millions of people all over the world, especially young people, of course, because young people saw in him something that was going to be coming. Yeah. They saw this new cacophony, they saw this new rhythm, this freedom, the hips, the gyrations, the middle section of the body, which was verboten on television. We were able to do from Europe.
The Ed Sullivan Show.
That's right. Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, good
Look
Lord.
what they're doing now.
Oh, now, forget
I wish
it.
that's all they were doing.
Put your clothes on. That's okay. Kind of thing. So Elvis Presley really had so much to do with the development of the recording industry and rock and roll. He was the very first performer that really let loose and was relaxed and appealed. And he just got into everybody's heart. Parents couldn't take it, except they loved it.
Yeah.
They were fascinated with him. Great looking guy. I mean, this great looking guy moved free. He moved the way everybody loved
Wish
him.
they could move.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. I did a television show with Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley says, "See that white boy is Elvis? I taught him to move." He says he was backstage at the Apollo Theater. Now, it could be true.
Yeah.
He says, he watched me move, and that's how Elvis got the pelvis. Yes, Bo Diddley.
That's funny. Well, I know that you say rock and roll emerged at the crossroads of several styles. So was Elvis kind of at the fork in the road at those crossroads?
Yeah, I would say that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, I would say you're right. I think Elvis held on to the late 40s and the 50s, of course, and he was a Renaissance guy, and then he started moving. Yeah. Unfortunately, he got surrounded by some bad guys, and it really just screwed his head up. And, he went down the tubes, which is unfortunate. But in his heyday, wow, he was wild. He was very altruistic. He was very giving. Elvis would see somebody needed money. I mean, really, this is true. He'd write a check. He'd give them money. He gave things to people. Yeah. He gave things to charity. People don't know that about him. He's very charitable. Oh, because all we hear about today is when we read some of these books, and when we watching these damn TV things, and all he did was his drugs, his sexual experiences, what he did with, the shooting of his friends. But we don't hear, because that's the stuff that they think people want to read. Exactly. What about the nice stuff? Exactly. Like what you're doing here, the good stuff. Elvis was a good guy. Was he an angel? No.
Is there an angel on earth? Earth angel. Earth angel.
All right, what's the flip side of that one? What's the back side?
I don't know the B-side.
I'll tell you after we get off the air. That's good trivia. Okay. All right? Okay. But he was a very special guy. He came into the studio once when I was on the air. He had no freedom, and they wrapped him up with a blanket. It was like a papoose, and they brought him in. He always called me sir. He never called me cousin, never called me Brucie. He was always sir. And when he called me on the telephone to thank me for playing his record, he said, "Sir," he was a gentleman.
That was his southern upbringing.
Oh, terrific guy. I love him.
So now, let's transcend. What did the Beatles do to music?
Oh, wow. Beatles, it's like, let's see, somebody flying a kite, right? And Orville and his brother, the Wright brothers airplane, and suddenly a rocket shuttle. Whoa! Well, the Beatles, kind of interesting. First of all, when they first came out, I was getting their music in 61, very early 62, late 60, 61, 62. And I said to myself, how dare these Brits take our music, our rock and roll, this idiom that we invented, and play with it. Little did I know what they were doing was that they were infusing spirit and great energy into it. Youth, which is what we needed. By 1962-3, the American music industry was really over bottom of the hill. The attitude with American corporate, which it still is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's right. If broke, don't fix it. We needed fixing. It was terrible. Well, here were these kids from Britain and a whole bunch of others that were was starting up too. They were infusing this new energy in this rock and roll that is ours. We invented it. And they were causing riots all over the continent. And I started looking and reading about it, started getting letters. Did I like the music right away? No, I kind of resented that these guys sounded better than we did. But little by little, this music started coming up because, the very first Beatle records that came in, that surprised a lot of people, didn't even make the top 100.
No?
Nobody liked it.
Nobody liked it.
And then something called Money came into the
almighty dollar.
picture. It's a song. Money makes the world go around. So you didn't know we got so much music.
I know, I'm loving it.
Music makes the world go round, and they infused a huge amount of money for hype. The Beatles weren't given to us by the Lord, and the Lord said, "Here, thou hast the Beatles, thou save your lives." No, didn't happen that way. Money gave us the Beatles, money gave us the hype. But they had one thing besides the money, they had talent.
They had talent.
And also they were just right on the money. They were right there on the nick of time. We were going through in 62, 63, viewing history, of course you do. It's in my book. We're going through assassinations, terrible racial strife, economic strife, political strife. God, it sounds like today.
It does.
It sounds like this is 60s too. We should have learned.
Repeating itself.
Well, we never learned. We never
do much.
That's the human experience.
Yeah.
And here are these four mop tops. Revolutionary might have a hair over here. Our parents freaked, right? Because it was different. And they were doing something different with rock and roll. And they infused this new energy and spirit, and boy, we needed them.
We needed them. Well, Cousin Brucie, I'm just getting cued that I cannot believe we are running out of time. Will you come back and visit us again?
Let's do part 2.
Please, please.
I love saying Finelli.
Finelli. I'm sure all our cousins out there want to hear more. So I'd like to thank you so much, not only for inviting us into your home, but sharing your experience
Thank you very much. A pleasure, Susan.
Thank you. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. If there's a topic you would like us to speak about, you can contact me at susan@behindtheshadows.com. If you've missed any of our programs, you can go to my website at www.behindtheshadows.com and click on Public Access Television. And until next time, remember, the brightest light shines behind the shadows. Thank you so much, Cousin Bruce.
My pleasure.
Oh, this
Always
is
a pleasure.
wonderful.
Always a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.